All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to June 9th, Tuesday MakerDAO community call. My name is David Utrobin. I work doing community development at the foundation and have been, just a long-time community member at MakerDAO for like a few years. And every Tuesday, I have the joy of facilitating this call, which in recent memory has been mostly to do two things. The purpose of this call, it's to kind of cover what the last week has been, stuff that's happened in the last week in the MakerDAO universe. As many of you might know, it's a lot of work to keep up with the MakerDAO universe because there's just so much happening constantly. And so this call is meant to help bring you up to date if you don't have those hours and hours of like reading through forum posts and Reddit and chat and trying to like be caught up to date. So this is a good place where you can grab the link to the agenda. I also make it available offline, so you could go through any Tuesday agenda literally for like the last 2 years. So you can feel free to check out any of the links that I post, and a ton of stuff there you might have missed. Hell, I might have missed, but there's nevertheless, there's a lot of utility in doing these kinds of wrap-ups. And so the second thing we do is every once in a while, we have an interesting guest, a demo, a topic that we discuss, even like one-off special edition calls. For example, last week we did a call themed around DAO Rush Week. So we did a little bit more focus around the human aspect of MakerDAO and what is community, who is a member of the DAO. My argument, my personal opinion is that any stakeholder is implicitly a part of the DAO, and anybody with a voice can have influence in MakerDAO governance. So I think that you don't have to be a token holder to be a part of MakerDAO, although token holders definitely have the final say in anything that really gets changed in governance or the system. But it seems to be that token holders tend to have very, very similar, how should I say it? Like they have a very correlated decision-making compared to the sentiment of like the conversations that are going on in the community. Historically, at least, like I think maybe a couple of times there was real dissent from maker holders that went against something that was going on in the forums, but I think it had to do more with like monetary policy and just it was like not clear-cut issues. But either way, welcome to the call. Today we're just going to be going through the agenda that I put together for you guys. We're going to do some updates on governance, some of the updates on blog posts from the foundation, partnerships, highlights from the community, all that good stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and anybody that's on the call, feel free to jump in. I kind of say that every week, and I mean it. I'm totally happy to derail and talk about stuff. So, all right, let's kick it off. So the TLDR for this week is a few different points. MKR voters passed an executive vote to add 2 new vault types. That's TUSDA and USDCB. And so so this actually took 6 days to pass. And right after it passed, TUSD did a token contract upgrade that messed with the token adapter that enabled the use of this vault. So currently TUSD is not working, but there is some more stuff that you could read about in this thread that I linked. Mariana Conti added some more details, and likewise Lev posted like the transactions for the specific contract upgrades. So if you're super curious, you can go dig into that yourself. But in general, there's gonna have to be like this kind of brought up a few issues with just token contract upgrades in general. Is that okay? If we have a vault type in the Maker protocol, like what is like the standard best practice for communication around token contract upgrades? Even like, should TUSD have some responsibility in reaching out to the Maker protocol, Maker governance, for example? maybe, maybe not. Should it be the onus on maker governance to kind of like try to prepare for it, or there's a lot of questions that this kind of opened up. So I'm excited to see those work through and see what's gonna happen. Yeah. Another executive vote that passed this week was the ETH debt ceiling increase. And in contrast to the vault types being added over 6 days, this vote was actually passed in under a single day, in 15 hours. So DAI from ETH was hitting that 120 million mark, and so yeah, we raised the debt ceiling. So that is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All right, so additionally, I wanted to mention, just to put you guys in the MIPS governance cycle mindset, we're currently in week 2 of the governance cycle. So a governance cycle, as a reminder, is a single month. There's 4 weeks in a governance cycle. And in week 1, typically the MIPS are that want to be submitted into the governance cycle are proposed. And the governance facilitators decide which ones are ready to be put up for inclusion polls. And basically that's what's happening this week. Last week, the governance facilitators discussed the 9 different proposals that came in this month. And you could see a list of these 9 proposals here. I'm actually going to talk about them in a few minutes anyway, so I'm not going to go through them now. Give me just a moment while I let this person who's in the waiting room in. All right, cool. Yeah, so there were 9 proposals, and the governance facilitators decided that 7 out of 9 of them are ready to go to inclusion polls. If they're passed in the inclusion poll, they will go to a governance poll in week 3, and then subsequently to an executive vote in week 4. And once it's passed through week 4, the proposals are officially accepted, ratified, added to the official canon of authoritative MIPS. So that's pretty exciting. And what's more exciting is that a lot of these, I don't know, oh no, I don't know why I had closed this so quickly, but a lot of these are actually amendments to MIPS that smooth out the process. So the first governance cycle definitely taught us a few things, and it's exciting to see that improvements are being made in general. So yeah. And I'm gonna get into brief descriptions of each of the changes so that you guys are in the know and don't have to dig too much yourselves. But also, just for important context, inclusion polls, oh yeah, I actually mentioned this. Yeah, so inclusion polls determine whether these MIPS get into the governance poll and then executive vote. So the 2 MIPS that weren't accepted were some proposals to add KNC and ZRX. And so they were not accepted because there were some missing work requirements in the proposals. So they are at best going to be added to the next governance cycle in July, after also the addition of that whatever missing work is there. Yeah, so also inclusion polls are the only polls that have sort of a minimum quorum requirement. We call it an inclusion threshold. So there needs to be a minimum of a 3,000 MKR lead. So it has to be like 3,000 MKR ahead, right? So if there's a total of 5,000 MKR voting, it's not going to pass if it's like 2,500 or 2,600 versus 2,400. It has to pass with a 3,000 MKR lead. That's my understanding. I think I'm right about that. But if I'm not right, I'll correct myself next week. So yeah, there will be an inclusion poll review during this week's governance and risk call. So the upcoming call on Thursday, the governance facilitators are going to look over the results of these inclusion polls and basically say whether or not these same proposals are going to show up in governance polls next week. So that's it for the quick TLDR of governance. The coming executive vote this Friday is going to follow the results of the governance polls that are active right now. And it's probably going to be a monetary policy based executive vote. Judging from the results that I saw last night when I was putting this together, There is a possibility that the base rate is going to go up from 0% to 1%, because 1%, I believe, is the current winning option. And the DSR is going to go up from 0% to 75 basis points. And that's because there's a lead on the 25 basis point spread option. So yeah, it's exciting to see that as a result of the DAI peg coming down and hitting that dollar mark and staying relatively close to the dollar mark, that MKR voters are now considering to stop subsidizing the peg and kind of bring rates back to normalized, back to normal operations, because technically the rate is supposed to cover the risk premium, which if you're charging 0%, then as an MKR holder, you're subsidizing the risk. So you're taking on risk without getting paid for it, basically. And so that's, and we're seeing slowly as the DAI peg, less people are worrying about it, the rates are slowly gonna be going up. All right, cool. So let me cover a few of the, well, actually all of the votes that are happening right now. So I prefaced all the inclusion polls with IPs and then all the governance polls with GPs. There's only 2 governance polls and just a bunch of inclusion polls. So the inclusion polls are for a brand new MIP 13. It's called the Declarations of Intent. And in short, it just proposes a process that allows maker governance to signal an intention to the wider community. They could like specify, hey, you know, we want a portal built and we're gonna allocate like, we wanna allocate like $10,000 to this project or something like that. Or hey, we want a Black Thursday liquidation report and we intend to put about, like, it gives the very first elementary step for the protocol to be able to like go and not issue work orders. I don't know if that's like the right way of putting it. But in general, it gives the ability for the DAO to like make an official stance and signal that it wants something from the community, I guess. Yeah, and then complementarily, if that's a word, MIP 14 is called Protocol DAI Transfer, and it's super simple. It's just a generic process for transferring DAI from the Maker protocol to a target Ethereum address. Like technically it's possible now, but there's no outlined process, which is the reason why Long for Wisdom put together this MIP and is proposing it, because it's kind of like step 1 for being able to pay people out of the protocol. And of course, if the protocol is going to be self-sustaining in the future, it has to be able to do that. So exciting to see that. And so the rest, I believe, are amendments. Yeah, so the final one, oh, actually this one is not an amendment. That's okay. I'll go through them one by one. But MIP 4 component 2 subproposal 1 is an amendment to some stuff in MIP 6. Basically, it proposes updates to the collateral onboarding process. It allows MIP 6 collateral applications to be eligible for the MIP 9 community greenlight polls at least 2 weeks after the applications have been proposed. And also, it moves the domain greenlight process until after those community greenlight polls. And this just kind of makes things more intuitive. I know it's a bit a lot to read in this like one little paragraph, especially if you haven't recently read like the governance cycle, for example, which outlines when community greenlight polls happen around the collateral onboarding applications. But basically, yeah, basically it just orders things a little bit more comfortable so that all of the, I guess, domain greenlight work can happen within a governance cycle. Yeah. So next, there's the inclusion poll for MIP 8 amendments. This one proposes that, again, the domain greenlight process, MIP 8, should occur after the proposed collateral asset has passed the MIP 9 community greenlight poll. And that allows domain teams to use the community green poll results to make a more informed decision and proceed with their domain work. So basically, the domain teams will only do domain work after they already get a sense for MKR holders' appetite for onboarding a given collateral. So it's just an efficiency gain there in ordering it that way. Another one, MIP 9 amendments. So this one proposes some minor language edits and addresses some inconsistencies detailed throughout MIP 9. More specifically, the proposed change will update the MIP to be consistent in saying that the community greenlight process will occur before the domain greenlight process. So again, these 3 amendments are kind of like shaping the same process, but in their like specified fields, because MIP 6 is the collateral onboarding, MIP 8 I believe is the domain greenlight process, and then MIP 9 is the community greenlight process. So it's a little bit different. So so it basically makes amendments so that in total this whole process just makes a lot more sense now. So yeah. Did I stop reading like in the middle of this? My apologies. It's a foggy Tuesday in my brain, so apologies. And feel free to jump in if you want like further clarification, or if you feel like you can clarify it a little bit better than I can. Totally welcoming to that. All right, cool. So yeah, let's keep going. So another thing that's happening is this sub-proposal for onboarding a risk domain team. So we've already onboarded a governance facilitator, an Oracle team, a smart contracts team officially, right, through the MIPS lifecycle, but we haven't done that for a risk domain team. And so this is kind of a necessary step that's proposing Cyrus Unesi as the person who is the head of the official risk team that's hopefully will be nominated by MKR governance this governance cycle. So yeah. And then finally, the last inclusion poll is amendments to MIP 12. And so this proposes an update to MIP 12 to allow the collateral onboarding process to operate more efficiently. More specifically, it states that the collateral onboarding can continue to operate despite not having an official general risk model ratified through the MIP 11 process. So this is one that I was trying to wrap my head around a little bit, but my understanding is that the risk team can still do like a risk evaluation on a given collateral, and in doing that, like they can propose risk parameters for given like collateral applications. But since there is no ratified general risk model like on the whole, that shouldn't be a blocker from adding individual collateral. So I think that's the root of this change, if I'm not mistaken. But I should probably read it over 1 or 2 more times. But yeah, I believe that's correct. And then the governance polls, the 2 are kind of regular business. There's a base rate adjustment. This happens every Monday and adjusts the global stability fee. So for example, if let's say, USDCB and W, like right now, everybody's operating under a 0% base rate. If the base rate was going to go up to 1, this would be 2%, and this would be 51%, right? This would be 1.75, this would be 1, this would be 1. So it's a global stability fee, and it's a new way that governance is actually adjusting the stability fees. So they vote on the rate, and then separately they vote on the risk premium portion of the stability fee for individual vault types. And then this is a bi-weekly vote, and it happens to fall on week 2 of the governance cycle and week 4. And this one uses ranked choice voting, and it's for voting on the DSR spread. So the DSR spread is also the new, relatively new. We've been voting on the DSR spread rather than the actual rate for quite some time now, thanks to Sam M, also known as Hexanaut. But basically these 2 work off each other. DSR spread determines the DSR based on whatever the base rate is. So it doesn't take into account the risk premiums of individual vaults. It only takes into account the base rate. So it makes things a lot simpler for governance. The summary of this last Thursday's risk and governance call is on its way. Should be posted in a day or 2. So stay tuned for that. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's all the votes. Now I'm gonna quickly go through just some of the interesting threads that were highlighted this week in Governance at a Glance. Actually, as I say that, I lie, because the weekly MIPS update, it should be in Governance at a Glance, but it's not in there. But Charles does a great job at summarizing where we're at in the governance cycle, giving a weekly MIP update. Typically, I think he posts it on either Friday or Monday, right after the governance call. But yeah, definitely take a read here if you are interested. I did hear somebody's microphone turn on, so if somebody wanted to say something, feel free to jump in. If not, I will continue. All right, cool. Let's continue then. All right, so a couple of collateral onboarding risk evaluations were posted by the unratified risk team. So Cyrus and his team. So these are really, really great kind of summaries of a lot of important data that maker holders should look through, read through, and use to consider whether or not ZRX, or what's the other one, or KNC are good enough for quality collateral, or not even whether they're good enough for quality collateral, but whether the risk parameters even make sense that are being proposed. So I highly recommend anybody with a mind for this to read through it. Maria, I'm gonna mute you. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, sweet. So 2 of these were posted, and they are an important domain area that should be, this should be happening for every single collateral that's going to be onboarded into Maker. There should be a risk evaluation. We should understand the liquidity of its markets, if there's any hint to its regulatory risk, if there's any hint to, all the different kind of stratospheres of risk that a token can experience. So also on the forum, a new MIPS forum subcategory was added. And this is for community members to discuss ideas for future MIPS instead of instead of just proposing them right away, these are like just the discussion threads, and they could be found at this link here. And if you didn't know, on the forum, if you're a user, there are these really lovely tags that people use. You could, if you are posting anything, be sure to like tag. I don't know why it's not showing up. It's these tags over here, but you can click on them and they'll bring out kind of everything of a certain category. So like Uniswap V1 has all of the threads relating to Uniswap V1. So definitely make use of this. It makes things way more discoverable. Yeah, so just a quick tip from me. All right, another new forum thread that I saw, I think it was posted like a week and a half ago. It was a revised version of the signal processing guidelines. So signal threads are threads on the forum that people use to gather sentiment from the governance community. And here are just kind of like some best practices to ensure that your signal thread is like actually a quality one and not missing the point or not veering or not like fundamentally flawed in some way, right? So this is just good for anybody who's looking to post that type of thread. Definitely read through that. Also, Sam started a thread on governance parameters. So since we vote on stuff like the base rate and the DSR spread, these aren't actually like inside the smart contracts. So these values are not in the smart contracts. So since we're starting to get a number of these parameters that don't correspond directly to numbers that are values in the smart contracts, he put up a thread to keep track of these until we get a better solution. So this is also pretty useful, especially like conceptually. So if you're thinking about a base rate and a DSR spread, then you want to figure out what the DSR is. It's kind of a nice visual way to figure that out through this little table here. And I think he even made a Google Doc for it. So thank you, Sam. And then lastly, for my governance roundup, is this interesting thread I saw. It's DAI is back under $1. Time to get prepared for tightening. That might be needed soon. What's next? So I just put this here because there's a ton of interesting comments going on, specifically with regards to the peg. Is it healthy? at what rate should fees start going up again, and etc. So definitely a worthy read if you're a regular voter for monetary policy issues. All right, cool. I'm gonna take a breather there just for a second. All right, so from the foundation, we did post a few different blog posts this week. Oasis released the multiply feature, and this is really cool because it basically is just a Maker Vault integration built into the Oasis app. So now you can trade with leverage through one of the oldest decentralized exchanges on Ethereum. So this has been long in the works, and it's pretty cool that it exists now. And I think it's largely a feature that could be adopted by almost any DEX because, you know, smart contracts and permissionlessness are awesome. Yeah, so the other two the two blog posts that I want to mention are this new type of blog post that they just came out with this month. It's a Maker governance review, and I think they're going to be posting it per cycle. And it covers a lot of the updates that I cover in these week-to-week calls. But again, it's yet another place that you can get this information. And then the last blog post that I want to mention is the DAI Gaming Initiative update. So the foundation ran this really cool kind of like developer challenge, incentivizing people obviously with some DAI prizes. And they announced the first MakerDAO game bounty winners. And I wanted to show this a little bit because if you are a developer, I believe that this gaming initiative is still running. So so the best, I think, so yeah, here it is. So along with the initiative, the foundation announces a series of bounties for developers who integrate DAI into games in various ways. So the best DSR integration, for example, earns 5,000 DAI. The best PvP experience earns 2,500 DAI. Best player versus evil, I assume that's bot, well, like evil bot, right? Experience 2,500 DAI. Best usage of DAI in a working game, there's two different prizes of 1,500 DAI. And so I believe, yeah, the competition that just ended was in the category of best use of DAI, so that was that last one. And we awarded it to two different games, to Marble Cards and BattleDAO, and they each won 1,500 DAI. So I'm excited to see the other integrations in those categories, but yeah, they're up for grabs. So if you're a developer and you're interested in blockchain and games, definitely take advantage. I only saw a couple of partnerships this week. We saw that vaults and the DSR are now integrated into JellySwap. I think JellySwap is like a decentralized exchange. And then likewise, OX created Matcha, which is also a decentralized exchange. And they integrated DAI as one of its first markets, and they're inviting users. So it's I think it's a closed beta test for this DEX. All right, so the last couple of sections before we get into discussion is just some highlights from the community. So we at Community Development actually launched a transparency dashboard for Maker Foundation grants. So this is just really cool if you're interested in like the numbers since February of 2018 for how much the foundation has given or invested into various projects that have applied and gotten grants through our grants program. I believe, yeah, out of 204 applications, we funded about 30. And of course, there is a ton of overhead in doing grants, right? You know, it's quite a challenge, and I think that over the next year or two, we're going to be working pretty hard to improve our infrastructure so that we can get these numbers up. But nevertheless, these projects resulted in really interesting experiments in the ecosystem, like the Ching store, which was an XDAI point of sale system for crypto wallets, which was really fun. I believe even Sablier might have gotten a grant. Either way, I'm a little bit rusty in who got the grants, but nevertheless, we have a transparency page and we update it every quarter. to bring to you the live numbers. So we also have one for meetups. So we brought together 5,600 people in 33 different countries. So since launching meetups in February, literally 33 countries have gotten meetup grants in DAI. And these are some of the like reported numbers based on the feedback forms that they do. So yeah, it's enough shilling of that. Moving on. Community development is also sponsoring a Gitcoin virtual hackathon with the theme Protect Privacy. So if you're a developer who's very focused on privacy solutions and blockchain, definitely check it out. There's some tracks, some good ideas in there, and yeah, it should be fun. Oh yeah, I should have probably put this up higher, but week 1 of DAI distributions are out for the SourceCred trial. So the SourceCred, to remind you guys, or to tell you for the first time if you haven't heard about it, is this technology that allows you to pay people based on this algorithm that you set up, and how people interact and contribute on the forums kind of results in how much they're paid out. And so this was the week 1 kind of results. And so 38 people were distributed $1,250 in DAI. And you can find like all the code for the algo, exactly kind of how it determined those numbers, and whether that's good or bad. You could figure it out, and you could like, yeah, all the details are here for you for your exploring. I have not explored them so deeply, so I will not pretend like I know everything about this. But nevertheless, it's really cool to see, and I wonder if there's the ROI for it, if it really makes sense to do stuff like this. But nevertheless, really cool experiment. All right, there's also a governance communications team research forum. So in the last few months, there was a working group that formed around governance communications, DAO communications, and I believe this is a survey form for the general community to help that working group understand kind of some of the some more individual metrics, or metrics in general, around what kind of activities you do on the forums, what kind of topics individuals are specifically interested in, and all this good stuff. It's a super short survey, takes like less than 5 minutes. Would really appreciate, it would greatly help that team if you guys could fill it out, and gals. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to mention it again. But Mariano Conti, with one of his infamous side projects, started DeFi 18N, which is international, or I forgot exactly what it stands for, but it's a collection of translation strings with a focus on Ethereum, dApps, DeFi, and wallets. It's under a Creative Commons CC 0 license, which means anybody can kind of pull from that repo and use it. And they don't have to basically give Mariano or DeFi 18N credit. I think that's what this license is about. And so yeah, since launching 2 weeks ago, there's been 14 different translations of DAI stats and counting. Like all of these up here were submitted by people in the greater crypto community, which is exciting to see. Yeah, and then yeah, wrapping up, just a few things, some articles. One article I found interesting was on CoinDesk. Even though never mind, not going to editorialize and give my opinion too strongly, but MakerDAO weighs accepting real-world assets as crypto loan collateral. They wrote this because they saw the Centrifuge and Tinlake collateral applications, and they talked a bit about the challenges, and it was a pretty good article. So definitely check it out. And if you don't know about Tinlake and Centrifuge, they're probably the most serious contender for pioneering real-world assets and giving them like a legal structure, and giving them kind of all of the back end rails that are needed to like handle liquidations and ownership, and just really the legal side, because that's the real challenge with real-world assets. Because on-chain assets are like bearer assets, you know. Ethereum is super easy to liquidate on-chain. but how do you liquidate a bundle of invoices? It's not so easy. But anyway, some notable threads. Oh yeah, I highlighted this this Twitter thread from Spencer Noon. It had some interesting MakerDAO stats. The shill and me couldn't resist, but yeah, just some fun stats. You guys could check them out on your own time. But yeah, also a couple of well, one video was released. So our community member Marcin, in conjunction with a couple of contributors, put together an Oasis walkthrough. So it walks through all the different Oasis apps: save, trade, and save. Oh, sorry, save, trade, and borrow. We first did an English version, and we just released the Spanish version. So yeah, pretty good tutorials. Definitely share with your friends if they are interested in learning about that stuff. One real life event from the community, not from us. I'm probably missing events that the foundation is actually participating in, but there is a virtual meetup that's happening on Friday at 3 p.m. GMT, and it's a DeFi Africa virtual meetup. So if you are
it's on Thursday.
It's on Thursday? My bad. My bad. Let me Thursday. Yeah, so it's Thursday. Definitely join that.
I'm here for this.
Yeah, I think I'm also gonna go in general because I'm curious what people do to make virtual meetups more engaging, and so yeah, definitely join that if you're interested. All right, so that's it for my agenda. I do have one thing that a community member had asked me to discuss or mention. So would be interesting to discuss and poll. I don't know if I'd be able to effectively poll with like the 10 or 11 people in here, but discuss the WBTC debt ceiling. If you can start to discuss at open discussions on our planet, yeah, cool. So there is actually a thread about this if you're interested in reading a little bit deeper, but the gist is that the current WBTC debt ceiling is like 90, like almost completely utilized. It's like 90, whatever, 1.9% utilized. So where is that debt ceiling? So the current debt ceiling is 10 million, and you know 9.9 million is being borrowed. So that's quite a lot, and some people are pushing for a raise. However, there is good reasoning for why the raise shouldn't happen right now, but should happen only after the stability fees for WBTC increase. And I wanted to highlight specifically Cyrus's answer here because he articulated it really well. So right now, WBTC vaults are essentially being subsidized by MKR holders in order for vault owners to profit off of a carry trade. So with the benefit of being used to improve the DAI peg, right? So increasing debt ceilings with no compensation for risk is not something that should be so automatic, though, especially with the unquantifiable aspect of the counterparty risk. Yeah, so he's saying that, you know, no compensation for risk is like okay with some things. For example, he says that perhaps uncompensated risk should be confined to ETH because at the least we don't have to reason about the counterparty risk. But with WBTC, there is a counterparty risk. So it is worth it to start raising the rate, and only after raising the rate to start expanding that debt ceiling. So yeah, if I don't know if Alex is on the call, if you want, feel free to like jump in, and if you have a specific view you want to share, definitely feel free to share it. This topic is interesting because it brings into question like the the order of operations for like what the typical MKR voter should be thinking about. They should be thinking about risk compensation, counterparty risk, like, you know, increasing the debt ceiling increases like the risk for MKR holders, because if something hits the fan, then we're on the hook for it, you know, or they're on the hook for it. But either way, cool. So it sounds like there's not too many comments about this. But Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading to see if there's anything else I could mention. Yeah, all right, cool. So yeah, this week's Tuesday community call is going to be a bit more chill. We can end it a little bit early if we don't have any other like discussion questions or stuff anybody wants to bring up or talk about. But yeah, so I'm going to give a few minutes, and if it's totally silent, I'm happy to end it a bit early.
I will. Can I, David, post a link here? I'm
Yeah,
able.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let me try.
In the chat. What is it for? Is it for the Friday DAI brunch?
It's no. This is next month, but I will. Okay. I will. This is Mariano speaking. This is from Lenka. So it's Mariano speaking in Spanish, exactly. It's I don't know how many of us will be away, but I don't. But maybe you guys will. It's at 7 p.m. Argentina time, I think. So
I'm trying to see what that is in New York time. Argentina time is, why is this so hard to figure out?
I think you should write Buenos Aires to New York time. I write 7 Buenos Aires to New York.
Let's try that.
But I think it's like 2 hours of difference.
So 7 p.m. in Buenos Aires is 6 p.m. in New York.
Yeah, just so one.
In about 5 hours, Mariano's going to be speaking.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. And that's it.
Right on. So, Maria, since you're on the mic, do you want to talk a bit about the DAI brunch event that you're going to be doing? Is it going to be every Friday?
No, this is going to be every month on the first Friday of the month, basically. And this is something more dedicated to people on the European time. So because it's in the morning of CET, 10 a.m. So you guys, I mean, from the US will be sleeping, but you can always rewatch because there is a nice replay you can watch. And the format is very nice because it's quite different from the usual DeFi virtual meetup that you used to watch. So we are talking about very different topics. Also, not we are trying to focus a bit more on topics which are not covered, like UX or use cases of DeFi in the various regions, or how does it feel to work in DeFi and in Web3. And so the first one, the first one was with Gustav and Leah from Centrifuge and Team Lake, which you just mentioned. And she's the product manager there at Centrifuge. And basically I interviewed them, making some questions like also personal related on about basically the feelings about working in Web3.
So it's like an interview and discussion format?
Yeah, the interview, yeah, exactly, and discussion format, because I basically made the same question to both of them, and then they discuss with each other. And but next one will be probably a slightly different format and a different topic, but I want to involve somebody who is not always on the stage, you know, because we used to see always the same faces.
You gotta get Robert on there.
Exactly. If you guys want to apply, or you are interested in being a guest there, everyone can like propose a topic and apply to participate.
Cool.
And also, if the first meetup was pretty well attended, and if it gets better, we will.
Oh, you already had one?
Yeah, that's.
I thought you were doing like your very first Friday brunch. It was
last Friday.
Oh, it was on the 5th. Oh yeah, right. Because we're in week 2 of June.
I will send you
me.
the yeah, but you were sleeping, so I will send you the replay. And also the platform we used was amazing. And tomorrow we will have a meeting too.
Yeah, I saw that. So I'm excited to check out. What is it? Crowdcast?
Crowdcast, yeah.
Crowdcast. Yeah.
I will demo. I will be
see.
the demo girl.
I'm excited.
I'll dance and sing. How about that?
I like that plan. I think the world needs more dancing and singing in these hard times.
I think you want me to sing. Maybe not dance.
I mean,
yeah, come on.
Both would be entertaining.
You should sing at the Friday brunch.
Well, I'll shake my booty.
Yeah. We
right.
need the intro jingle.
So with that, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you all for being here on the Tuesday community call. Hope this was interesting to you. If not, tell me how I could improve it, and if it was, then I'll see you next week.
Thanks for your continued support, David.